welcome back to Cruising as a Crew. My name is Lucy, and today, as you can see by the title, we're going to be going through cruise lines and cruise ships that I basically think you should stay away from. So Gary from Tips for Travellers made a video about this, but it was aimed at passengers. So cruise lines that passengers should stay away from going on a cruise. But since most of you wonderful people watching my channel are crew members and aspiring crew members, I wanted to make the same kind of video but for you guys. So if you're going to work on a cruise ship, what cruise lines and what cruise ships should you actually try and steer clear from? So that's what we're going to go through today. But before we start, I just want to remind you that I am posting regular videos on TikTok, so go and follow me over there if you have TikTok. So the first cruise line that I would recommend you stay away from is MSC. I have never worked on MSC. I have never cruised on MSC. Everything I've heard about MSC from like a cruise point of view has been quite good. It hasn't been incredible, but there's been good reviews. In terms of people working on MSC, it's all been pretty negative. Unless you're Italian, which we'll get more into in a minute. So I made a video a while back, and I will link it down below, about mafias on board cruise ships. And I'm not going to go into too much detail here because, I mean, you can watch the video if you want to. But in a nutshell, on any cruise ship, you're going to get some sort of mafia develop. And it's usually between the most dominant nationality on board, which is usually Indian, Filipino. However, MSC is an Italian cruise line, a lot of Italian crew members, so the dominant nationality on board is the Italians, and they make up the mafia on board. And what's good about being part of a mafia on board is that you've just got loads of people that you can ask for favours. Like if one of your friends is a chef in the mafia, you can be like, hey, can you cook me some food? And they'll cook you some food because you're the same nationality. But then when they ask you to do something, you do something in return. So it's very much, if you scratch my back, I'll scratch your back, which is fine. So as I said, if you're Italian, go on MSC. You are going to have the best time. You're going to make amazing friends because they're literally from the same country as you, or they'll speak Italian. Just to clarify, I am not bashing Italians in this video. I love Italians. I have a lot of Italian friends. I am bashing the cruise line, because I do believe the crew environment on board a ship starts at the top. Like any company, if you have good management, it filters down. Like, there is no saying that is truer than that. If you have a crappy team, you probably have crappy management. And it's the same, like even on one ship, if you have a really dysfunctional crew life, it's usually because right at the very top. And I've said in previous videos, it's really important on a cruise ship to have a good mix of nationalities. For example, the reason that the Virgin life was so good on my first Scarlet Lady cruise ship, there was no dominant nationality. Everyone was from everywhere. There was a few Americans, a few English, a few Filipinos, Indians, Italians, Norwegians, people from Australia. Like, there was a collection of people from every country. So there was no like big cliques, mafias that could be formed. So the problem with having loads of Italians on MSC, it's not the issue with the Italians, because it's human nature to be drawn to people who are from the same place as you. As much as I love everyone from everywhere, I am drawn to people from England. It's not the fault of the Italian crew members, but it's the fault of the cruise line for filling their ships with one nationality. I really hope that makes sense and doesn't come across offensive, because it's really not supposed to be. So what I have heard from crew members that have worked on MSC is, if you can't speak Italian, you're screwed. 90% of the crew members who are Italian only speak in Italian, as you would. Of course you're going to speak in your mother tongue if there's loads of people who understand you. But it does mean for those people who are Filipino, Indian, English, they're like, what the hell are you saying? Of course, another issue is accents. Italians have very strong accents, beautiful accents, but very strong accents. So if you're from India and you've got an Indian accent, and when you learnt English, you learnt American English, and now you have an Italian speaking Italian English, it may as well be a different language. Like, something I've learnt on cruise ships, accents make the world of difference. the world of difference. So understanding instructions is really difficult. Like, I have one really good friend who is from the Philippines, and his manager's Italian, and he's like, every morning I'm in the meeting and I smile and nod because I've said to him, I have no idea what you're saying, please slow down in future, and he doesn't. So this guy's like, well, there's nothing I can do. I've spoke to you about it. I can't understand you. So of course he makes a lot of mistakes, but it's not his fault. It's because he didn't understand the initial instruction. It's very difficult, and also is hard to make friends on MSc if you are not Italian, because people have already formed their groups that are made up of Italians where they speak Italian to each other. So your pond of potential friends is going to be a lot smaller on an MSc ship. Now, I'm sure in the comments I'm going to have people be like, I went on MSc and I had a great time. I actually hope you did. Like, I hope everyone who goes on a cruise ship has the most amazing time. But a question that I get a lot is, I'm applying for cruise ships, which one should I stay away from? So I'm answering the question, and in my opinion, I have never heard anything good about MSc unless it was from an Italian person. So the other cruise line I'm going to urge you to stay away from for completely different reasons is Fred Olsen. Now, Fred Olsen is a Norwegian owned company. They're a lot smaller, so you might not have heard of them, but nevertheless they are great, especially because of the itineraries. So Fred Olsen has smaller ships. I mean, they're still cruise ships, but compared to like Royal Caribbean Symphony of the Seas, the Fred Olsen ships are like yachts. They're tiny in comparison, which means the itineraries are better because those smaller ships can fit into better ports. If you end up on a bigger ship, you're going to end up going to places like Barcelona, places in the Caribbean, Miami, because they have ports that have been built to hold these humongous cruise ships, whereas like Oslo in Norway and Agios in Greece, Agios, whatever, they're small places, so they can only accommodate smaller cruise ships. But because they are less touristy areas, I mean, in my opinion, they're better. Like, they're the places that you want to go to. So itineraries on Fred Olsen are really, really great. So if you are going on cruise ships to travel, maybe look at Fred Olsen. But I mean, I'm going to tell you why you shouldn't, but you can make your own mind up. On most cruise ships now, if you don't have your own cabin, you will have a bunk bed cabin that you share with one other person, and you will have a bathroom in that cabin. So you're only going to be sharing a bathroom with that one other person who is of the same gender, as you. But living standards for crew weren't always that great. And Fred Olsen ships are very old. See where I'm going with this? So the people, or the friends I have that have worked on Fred Olsen ships, have told me about the living conditions. I mean, they're not like, there's not like rats, so it's not that bad, but I wouldn't want to live like that. So basically, cabins can sleep 4 people. There's a lot of cabins that sleep 4 people, so which means there's a higher possibility that you will end up in a cabin with 4 people. Yes, they will be of the same gender, but like, that's 4 people. Sharing a cabin with one person is enough. To have 3 people, 3 different personalities, potentially from different countries, who speak different languages, to contend with in your like sanctuary, in your space, I mean, that's a lot. That is a lot. So I mean, to be honest, after working on Virgin, I don't think I could ever go back to sharing a cabin with another person, let alone 3. And in these cabins, there's no bathroom. So the bathrooms and the showers and stuff will be down the hallway. I know, right? Horrifying. My friend Lindsay would tell me that she would have to like wrap herself in the towel, leave the cabin, walk down the hallway, and, you know, potentially bump into other crew members on the way, go into the bathroom and like have a shower and stuff in the communal showers. But, you know, you would always have to wear flip-flops because they're communal showers, you know. And also, it's just not ideal. I don't want to see anyone while I'm in a towel. I do not want to still wear my flip-flops in the shower. Like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to have to walk back to my cabin with soaking wet hair. Like, it's just not ideal. Now, I think they have updated some of their ships, so might not be as bad as I'm making out now. But nevertheless, there are still some Fred Olsen ships that are like this. So do with that what you will. And also they're old, so they're falling apart. So I remember on P&O Oceania, I've never actually said this actually, I don't think. No. On P&O Oceania, me and my mate Louis, we went up to dinner because we were on our dinner break. And afterwards, I went back to his cabin to get, I think I was borrowing like a battery for the remote or something. And I went back to his cabin and he was on the top bunk. And he opened the door and the roof had collapsed on his top bunk. And I was like, well, I'm glad that didn't happen while you were sleeping. But the point is, like, Oceania was an old ship. Fred Olsen, they're old ships. There's going to be leaks. There's going to be potentially roofs caving in on bunk beds. You know, these things happen and we laugh about them, but in all seriousness, that could have been quite disastrous if he was in bed when that happened. But anyway, he got given a guest cabin for a few months, so he was happy as Larry. But yeah, so that's my little talk on Fred Olsen and why I wouldn't work on a Fred Olsen ship. I would 100% cruise on a Fred Olsen ship. Work on there, not so much. Alright, so now I'm going to talk about cruise ships rather than cruise lines. So, Queen Mary 2, Cunard. So I'm not telling you to stay away from Cunard. Cunard is a wonderful cruise line. I know a lot of people who work on Cunard and they had a blast. So 100% go for Cunard. But just don't go on the Queen Mary 2 if you can help it. So this cruise ship's itinerary is grueling. It goes from Southampton. That's embarkation day. Then you spend 6 days at sea to get to New York. Those people will get off in New York. New people will get on in New York. You will spend 6 days at sea and go back to Southampton. So you have 2 ports during that cruise. And oh yeah, awful. 6 days at sea, no thank you. And it's not even like Caribbean calm sea. It's gonna be rough. So yeah, I'm just not feeling that. I remember when I first got my job with Harding, and before they allocated me to P&O Oceania, they gave me Cunard Queen Mary, and I was like, no, I ain't doing it. And they were like, well, you don't really get a choice on your first cruise ship. I was like, well, I'm not doing it then, I'll get another job. And they were like, oh, but why? Like, it's so good. And obviously I'm glad that it all worked out with Harding, but I was that adamant that I wasn't. I was like, I work on cruise ships to see the world. If I go on Queen Mary, I'm going to be seeing Southampton and New York. And actually, I'm not even going to see them because in Southampton, there'll be a delivery. And it's embarkation day. Embarkation day is always a busy day. And then in New York, you can't get off in New York. And they were like, well, yeah, you'll be able to get off in New York. I was like, I've worked on ships for a long time. I know that I will not be able to get off in New York because I think I literally said this in my last video. To get off in New York, you have to have done at least 3 contracts with a cruise line. The cruise line I worked on before was Royal Caribbean, and you don't work with Royal Caribbean. So whatever cruise line you put me on, it's going to be my first contract, which means that I will not be allowed to get off in New York. I'm sure the cruise ship would let me off in New York, but New York won't let me off in New York. So I just said no, and I was like, look, I've worked on ships for years, I'll get another job. I'm not going on that ship. And luckily it all worked out for me and they put me on P&O Oceania. And now, on the one hand, people were like, P&O Oceania is a bit of a downgrade from Cunard because Cunard ships are so regal and beautiful. And I was like, yes, if I was cruising, if I was going on a holiday, of course Cunard would be the choice. But I'm going to be working on the ship for like 6 months, going backwards and forwards to Southampton and New York. No, I don't want that. And one of those ports I won't be able to get off in, and Southampton, I mean, I can get there on the train from where I live. I don't want to do that. And I am so glad that I did, because although P&O Oceania was falling apart, P&O have actually got rid of Oceania now because it was so old. The itinerary was wonderful. Like, we did Malta for a week, then we did Italian ports for a week, then we did Croatian ports for a week, and it was absolutely beautiful. I had one of the best contracts. Well, actually I did 2 contracts on P&O Oceania. I went back for a second contract because it was so good. So I definitely made the right choice there. But anyway, I'm completely off topic. Let's bring it back to Cunard, Queen Mary. I would never choose to go on that because of the itinerary. I think Queen Mary at some point during the year does do like Canada, Nova Scotia, oh my god, what's it called? Vancouver. And you know, it does some really, really nice places, but it's only for like 2 months of the year. So I don't know, I wouldn't do it, but if you want to do it, do it. And then lastly, what I would recommend is staying away from any cruise ship that does long cruises. Now this is difficult because when I worked on Radiance of the Seas, Royal Caribbean Radiance of the Seas, we did long cruises. And normally if you're doing long cruises, it means you're going to go to some exciting places because you actually have to travel quite a long way to get to those exciting destinations. You know, we did Alaska, we did Canada, we did Hawaii, we did Bora Bora, we did Australia and New Zealand and all of the Pacific Islands. One of the best itineraries ever, like, oh my god, absolutely nuts. Had the best time of making money. So I suppose this advice really is only for people who are going into a revenue department. A revenue department is shops, the art department, the spa department, if you're working on the bar and you have to sell drinks packages, the casino, port and shopping guide. So basically it's a sales job. That's when you don't want to be on long cruises. Because, for example, what happened in the shops when we were doing long cruises, people get on the cruise ship, they're really excited. During the first few days, they come and have a look around the shops. They don't buy anything because they're just sussing out what they want to spend their money on. And then they're spending like 2 to 3 weeks on board the cruise ship. So there's no urgency to buy. So no one buys anything during the cruise, and then in the last like 2 nights of the cruise you're really busy and you make a little bit of money, but you never hit target. And it's really hard to like sell and put a bit of pressure on because there is no pressure. They're on for 2 to 3 weeks. Whereas if you do cruises that are like 3, 4, 5 days, people get on, they look around the shops, they're like, oh, I might not get another chance to come back to the shops because we're only here for 5 days. So they buy it when they see it. And it's the same with, you know, other departments like the casino and the spa. They do it there and then because there isn't loads and loads of time. And also a shorter cruise, you're going to have a smaller target, but you're going to have that excitement. So it's a lot more likely that you'll hit it. Whereas a long cruise, you will have a huge target because of course the company doesn't care that they're not excited. They work it out based on, well, you've got this many guests and they're on for this long, so you're going to make hundreds of thousands. And it's like, well, no, we're not, because for the first 12 days of the cruise, they're not going to buy anything. And we cannot make 200,000 in 2 nights. I mean, it's been done, but it's very unlikely. Now, if you are in a non-revenue department, you know, if you're housekeeping, if you're a chef, like back of house, if you work in crew office, this really doesn't make a difference because, I mean, you don't work with targets. It doesn't matter if people buy anything. Your job is to make sure they have a good cruise. So it literally doesn't matter. This is only applicable if you're going into a sales job. Now, I've been very fortunate and seen a lot of the world. My main focus is earning money. So I want to be on a cruise ship with very short cruises ideally because that's where we're going to make the most money. So that is the end of the video. I hope this has given you a little bit of insight into what to stay away from, why you want to stay away from certain things. If you have any questions, please ask them in the comments. Do not message me on Instagram, please. But anyway, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you guys being here, and as always, I will see you in the next video, guys. Have a good day.